My name is Lucy. Currently, I live with my husband, Alex, in the same house with his parents. We bought this house 3 years after we got married, but soon after we moved in, Alex's parents suddenly showed up saying, "We can't thank you enough for buying a house for us." They brought a lot of luggage, and there was even a moving truck parked behind. As I stood there in shock, Alex nonchalantly walked past me and said, "Dad, Mom, I've been waiting. Come in." Alex's mother said to me, "Lucy, we're counting on you from now on," and proceeded into the house. However, seeing the amount of their luggage, I felt they intended to live here, so I quickly asked Alex, "What's going on?" In response to my question, Alex said, "What's so strange? We bought this house to live with my parents, so I brought them here." I was shocked. I had once mentioned the possibility of living with my parents to Alex, but I had never touched on the subject of living with his parents. Moreover, why did the situation of living with his parents suddenly arise? I was terribly confused. Living with my parents was also a plan for the future, not something immediate. And why did Alex invite his parents without discussing it with me? I asked Alex this when I saw his parents starting to bring their luggage into the room. He seemed to understand that he hadn't discussed living together with me, scratching his cheek and saying, "Well, if we're going to live together, I'd rather it be with my own parents. Otherwise, wouldn't your parents take over this place?" I was so surprised that I just replied, "Huh?" When I had talked about living with my parents, he had agreed. But perhaps he had agreed then just to avoid a confrontation with me. And by inviting his parents first, he prevented my parents from moving in. What are you really thinking? You agreed before when I said my parents would eventually live with us, but now you suddenly brought your own parents. Are they really going to live here? I've been thinking a lot too, but you didn't wait for my response and rushed for an answer, so I couldn't say no at that moment. I didn't rush you at all. I just asked for your opinion. I wanted to live with my parents. Then you should have made that clear when I brought up the topic of living together. Stop acting like a child. Living with Alex, I've realized that he has a very childlike personality. Whenever I do something, he comes over curious, asking, "What are you doing?" Maybe children are easier to deal with. If a child shows interest in household chores, you can suggest, "Want to try?" and they might engage. But Alex asserts, housework is not a man's job. I thought that dealing with a childish adult might be more troublesome than an actual child. Apparently overhearing our argument, my mother-in-law started keeping my distance, advising, "Lucy, you might feel dissatisfied over trivial matters between husband and wife, but some compromise is necessary." I sensed a demand in her words. My in-laws seem to view me merely as an appendage to their son. If they think I'm just an accessory making a fuss about not wanting to live together, her behavior makes sense. From my perspective, Alex is the accessory, but they don't seem to see it that way. My mother-in-law was eager to help with household chores, but their attitude was grating on my nerves. This situation continued, and as I pondered how to respond to their attitude, Alex's sister, Kate, visited. Kate is 5 years younger than me, already married 3 times and currently living with a new husband. When I returned home, Kate was already there. "Welcome back, Lucy. I heard about it. You stood up to my brother and tried to kick our parents out of this house," she said. I was shocked and looked sharply at Alex sitting beside me. Why would Alex tell such a lie? Is it to make me look like the enemy? Alex wilted under my gaze, averting his eyes. If he feels awkward, he shouldn't have chosen words that blame me in the first place. Then Kate, who had been observing, stood up as if to protect Alex. "Lucy, if you're going to make such a face, please leave. Just as I heard, you are a demon wife. It's bad for prenatal education to have you around." Being suddenly told to leave, I was confused about which part of the house she was referring to. For a moment, I thought she wanted me to leave Alex's room where he was enjoying conversation with his sister, but that didn't seem to be Kate's intention. She stroked her belly and said, "I'm planning to give birth in my hometown. So, Lucy, I don't want you in the house. At least until my child comes into this world." Confused, I replied, "What do you mean?" Wow, Lucy, that face is scary. No wonder my brother avoids you. You might be close to getting divorced. Kate was teasing me with a smirk on her face. When I looked towards Alex, he was avoiding my gaze, looking down. Even if the other person is a dear sister, anyone would stop her from criticizing their wife. However, just as Kate pointed out, maybe Alex is getting tired of me. But being told such things, my interest in him also wanes. I can't forgive him for inviting his parents to live with us without my permission and for speaking ill of me to his parents and sister. His attitude seemed to belittle me. Why should I continue to treat such a person with affection? I felt my feelings for him growing cold. And since there was no room decided, I'll be using your room. Please organize your belongings. Now, big brother, say something too. It's been hard for you because of the demon wife, right? Alex hung his head at Kate's words but stood up, pulled up by her forceful hand. Prompted by her, he gave a strained smile and said, "My important sister is going to give birth here, so we don't need you. You can sleep on the streets or something." Reflecting on the 3 years of marriage, I took a deep breath and replied, "All right." Kate exclaimed with joy, raising both hands. "Really? I'm so happy." Alex let out a sigh of relief, as I didn't respond with anger. However, in my heart, I decided to give appropriate punishment to Alex, Kate, and my in-laws. One evening, during a family dinner, I presented Alex with divorce papers. His face was a picture of surprise. "Sign the divorce papers. You want me to leave this house, right? If you don't sign, I'll stay here." "If that's the case, big brother, why don't you sign?" But in the end, I think Lucy won't file them. I often use that trick too. Get them to sign, and if you don't want to divorce, just follow along. It seemed Kate had used these papers in the past to manipulate situations to her advantage. Such a person is bound to be divorced, I thought, but she seemed oblivious. Alex, accepting Kate's suggestion, signed the divorce papers without hesitation. It bothered me that he misunderstood my intention, thinking I presented the papers just as a threat. Normally, such documents aren't presented without the intention to divorce. However, getting his signature so easily made me feel a bit lighter. Now, I could take full revenge on them. The divorce was finalized, and I promptly organized my belongings. At that time, Kate was back home, confirming her plans for childbirth. Hence, she said she didn't intend to come to the house until my belongings were properly stored and the room was cleaned. As a result, I was diligently packing up after returning from work. In the meantime, I found and signed a lease for an apartment suitable for singles and began the process of selling the house. After moving my necessary belongings to the new apartment, I visited my in-laws' house. There, I found Alex, Kate, and my in-laws, all 4 of them together. Knowing that my father-in-law and Alex would be off work that day, and that my mother-in-law and Kate didn't work, I decided to visit when all of them were present. My sudden visit surprised all 4 of them. Moreover, when I arrived, 3 of them, except Kate, seemed to have been enjoying alcohol since the afternoon. In their presence, Alex was saying, "Lucky that woman left. She thought if she got angry, everything would go as she wanted." She acted so arrogantly, troubling me. My mother-in-law responded, "Indeed, Lucy had a somewhat difficult personality." The reason I was angry with Alex was that he started living with his parents and even made me leave the house for his sister, all without discussing it with me. I was angry because of his unreasonable actions. However, it seems within the in-laws family, I am somehow perceived as the bad one. Listening further, remember the girl I introduced earlier? It seems he started dating her, but she's a better match than the previous sister-in-law, right? I think a more adorable woman suits my brother better. They discussed his shocking affair. If their relationship started a week ago, that was when I was already proceeding with the divorce, so I guess it won't be an issue of infidelity. But still, his actions infuriated me. I briskly opened the room door and checked the faces of the chatting in-law family. The 4 of them seemed not to expect my return and were surprised. I came with the real estate agent. Lucy, who is that man behind you?" Alex asked, pointing to the man behind me. Before I could say anything, Kate exclaimed, "Isn't that sister-in-law's new partner? Brother, this is infidelity. Let's make her support us financially." In the midst of everyone thinking Alex and I are still married, I've lost all patience with Kate, who, despite having introduced Alex to a new lover, is now making a fuss demanding money. Amidst this, the real estate agent handed a business card to my father-in-law and greeted him. Looking at the card, my father-in-law wondered, "Why is someone from real estate here?" The agent replied, "To appraise the value of this house." My in-laws exchanged glances and started laughing. "We plan to continue living here, so no appraisal is needed." However, the agent clearly stated, "Actually, this house is in Lucy's name. She wishes to sell it, so we are proceeding with the sale." Upon hearing this, my in-laws showed expressions of surprise, seemingly unaware of this fact. Perhaps Alex hadn't accurately conveyed this information. Alex said he would explain the details himself, so I left it alone. However, from my in-laws' attitude, it was clear that they had not received this information. They seemed to think I was just a burden and that Alex was supporting me by buying this house. So, I planned to explain the truth about the house's ownership and financial aspects to Alex and his parents if the situation didn't improve after a while. However, before I could explain, Alex's sister Kate appeared and kicked me out of the house as the owner. Therefore, I judged that dialogue with this in-law family became difficult and decided to take direct action. That action was to find a new home for myself, complete the move, and then promptly sell this house. Alex seemed to take Kate's words at face value and was complacent, thinking I wouldn't divorce. Seeing Alex's surprised face, I sighed inwardly. Since I, the owner, was kicked out of this house, it makes sense to sell it. It might be, but this residence is mine as well, and since we're married, it's also yours. Right now, my parents and sister are living here too. So what? Whether you or your family are here, it's irrelevant to me. Besides, we divorced quite some time ago. You signed the divorce papers, right? I submitted them to the city hall immediately. At my words, Alex seemed shocked and said, "What?" He seemed to think the divorce papers were just a threat. Disappointed, I sighed again. Then Kate started accusing, "Such an unforgivable woman. This she-devil, using my brother's money to get the house and then putting it in your name. I wonder who she thinks is the cause of this situation." I stared at Kate. "Your beloved brother actually doesn't have any money. He's working, but all his income goes to repaying borrowed money. Why does my brother have debts? Isn't that because he paid your living expenses?" Kate had been married 3 times, but 2 of them ended due to her infidelity. Each time she would say, "Please keep it a secret from my parents. I don't have the funds, so help me," and Alex would comply with her unreasonable requests. At first, I didn't notice, but then I discovered that the savings we were supposed to be building together had significantly decreased and confronted Alex about it. It turned out that Alex had been giving living expenses to his sister Kate without telling me. Despite this, I resolved the house payments using my own savings. I was beyond surprised and felt utter disdain for him for giving his sister such amount of money. Even if he said he would pay back the money in the future, I could no longer trust his word. I hired a lawyer. It was to recover our joint savings that he had squandered. Before I could share this fact, his parents, learning about their daughter's infidelity, exploded in anger. All her past divorces, she said they were due to personality clashes. To think Kate was unfaithful. Such a dirty child. We didn't raise our children to be adulterers. Wait, Mom, Dad, it's just Lucy talking nonsense. This isn't true. Perhaps feeling disadvantaged in this situation, even Alex, who doted on Kate so much, exclaimed, "It's all your fault. Because of all the money I gave to you to support your life, I ended up in debt, and because of you, Lucy and I had to divorce." Hearing this, I said, "Is it really all Kate's fault? It was your decision to suddenly bring your parents to my house, wasn't it? It was you who collaborated with your family to label me a wicked wife. And to think, just because your sister is your favorite, you plan to drive me out of the house, eventually leaving me to live on the streets? That's ridiculous. He tried to cling to my leg, but I kicked him away. I'll be getting back all the money I paid on your behalf. Prepare yourself. I'm coming with my lawyer tomorrow. With that, I left the house. While we were talking, the house valuation was completed. Fortunately, it looks like the house will be sold as I hoped. The next day, when I showed up with my lawyer and explained the list of expenses he had wasted, his parents, looking at it seriously, said so much money existed, yet because of Kate's actions. They glared sternly at Kate, who was at the corner of the room. It seems his parents came to the house believing Alex's words about taking care of things from now on. But Alex's lies and Kate's adulterous actions had destabilized their retirement life, and they were furious. Alex incurred additional debt. After that, he was immediately kicked out of the house and ended up living in a simple apartment with his family. Kate, facing condemnation from her family, decided to live with her husband for a while and gave birth. However, since the child's hair color was clearly not her husband's, she was kicked out of that house as well. It was difficult for Kate to raise her child properly, and the child was placed in an institution. Kate, with nowhere to go, seemed to have no choice but to return to her condemning family. It seems she is still being asked for money by Alex, but I am free. I am enjoying my independent life and considering trying something new in the future. My name is Lindsay. I'm a 29-year-old company employee, and this year means I'm getting older still. I met Jake, a year older than me, through friends, and we decided to marry 6 months after we started dating. Jake, who made a name for himself in tennis during his student days, is an active person who continues to play tennis even now. As I was in the tennis club during my student days, we immediately found common ground together. Once we started dating, we would often play tennis together on the weekends. One day, after our date, Jake proposed to me and we decided to get married. It's been almost 3 years since we got married. We don't have children, but we bought an apartment after getting married and have been living together ever since. Both of us work, and while we aren't struggling financially, we can't say that we're wealthy either. We're living a happy life. However, something happened between us that shattered my peaceful days. One day, Jake suddenly asked me to come to his parents' house. Surprised, I hurried there to find Jake, his parents, and an unknown woman waiting for me. As I struggled to understand the situation, Jake suddenly knelt down and said, "Lindsay, I'm truly sorry. The truth is, I've been involved with this woman here, Olivia. Last week, we found out that Olivia is pregnant. I feel responsible for her and the baby. So I think it's better that we separate. I'm sorry, but I want a divorce." Jake shocked me with this revelation. Exposed to his infidelity, the pregnancy, and faced with his demands for divorce, I was stunned. That was when my mother-in-law spoke to me. "Lindsay, please forgive Jake. Yes, he cheated, but the problem lies with you too. You and Jake weren't really a good match from the beginning. So, I'm sorry, but please forget about him." And my father-in-law added, "Olivia's father is an executive at a major company. A man in a totally different position from someone like your poor father. I think you know who's more suitable for our son." I couldn't believe it. Jake's father belittled not only me, but also my father too. Normally, parents would put the blame on their son for cheating, but Jake's parents didn't seem to think that way. Instead, they seemed to think it was natural for us to divorce, and that their son had done nothing wrong. I took the divorce papers and said, "I understand what you all want to say. Being with people who have such warped thoughts might affect me too. I'm shocked at how you make it seem like I'm the villain despite Jake's infidelity. Don't worry, I'll file these divorce papers myself. I'll leave the rest to a lawyer." And with that, I quickly left the scene. As I left, my father-in-law mockingly said, "A poor person hiring a lawyer? What a waste of time and money, when she doesn't even have any. She shouldn't bite off more than she can chew." Ha ha ha. Ignoring him, I left his parents' house and immediately went to City Hall to file the divorce papers. At least I was able to end my marriage with Jake. The next day, surprisingly, Jake and Olivia came to my apartment. Seeing me, Jake said, "Oh, you're still here? You haven't even packed your things. You're taking your time, aren't you?" Hearing this, Olivia also looked at me curiously. I was furious at Jake's words. "What are you talking about? You're the one who should be taking it slow. This is my house, so you should be the one to leave. The movers are coming soon to take all your belongings to your parents' house. If there's anything you don't want them to touch, you should take it now," I retorted. Hearing this, Jake suddenly panicked. "What? This is my house. The ownership should be in my name," he exclaimed. I was dumbfounded. After all, this apartment was bought in my name. I had already told Jake about this and about my family's background before we got married. But it seems that Jake is the type to conveniently forget things that don't suit him. Perhaps this carefree nature is why he was easily swayed by Olivia. I showed the deed to the apartment and my name was clearly written on it. Jake's face quickly changed upon seeing it. Meanwhile, Olivia's face began to cloud over with anger. "Jake, what is this all about? This is completely different from what you told me before. Were you deceiving me?" Olivia began to confront him. This is strange. What's happening?" Jake responded in confusion. "That's not an answer. Explain yourself." Olivia pressed on. "First, this is my house, so please take your argument outside. And just so you know, Jake has various debts. So if you're planning to marry him, be prepared for that burden." I calmly stated the facts to Olivia. Hearing this, Olivia seemed about to say something, but I didn't care and kicked both of them out of the room, slamming the door behind them. After a while, I could hear them arguing outside the door, but it eventually quieted down. About an hour later, the movers finally arrived and took all of Jake's belongings to his parents' house. The room was now clean, and I was relaxing in the newly organized space. But it was short-lived. Suddenly, the intercom rang repeatedly. I cautiously opened the door with the chain lock still on, and my mother-in-law was standing there. "Hello, is there something you need?" "Lindsay, why did you keep such an important thing a secret? What are you talking about? I can't believe it, but Jake just told me that this apartment is in your name and that your parents are the owners of that famous restaurant chain." It seemed Jake finally remembered my family's circumstances. "What about it? If I had known, I would never have let this divorce happen. A daughter from such a wealthy family. We would love to have you back in our family. Lindsay, please, reconsider and start over with Jake." I was shocked and at a loss for words at her outrageous request. I couldn't possibly agree to what she was asking. "You really have a terrible way of thinking about things. Am I not a human being? Are you only interested in money? I'm sorry, but I don't want anything more to do with you. There's nothing more to talk about, so please leave," I said and attempted to close the door. But my mother-in-law, infuriated by my attitude, raised her voice in anger. "Don't be so arrogant. I'm giving you my permission to reconcile your differences. Fix things with him right now. I won't leave this spot until you agree to get back together. Open this door immediately." She said this, pounding on the door repeatedly. I decided that I couldn't handle this alone and called the police. They came and took my mother-in-law away. Even as the officers were taking her, she was shouting something loudly, but I no longer cared to listen to her words. There was a reason why my in-laws were unaware of my family's business background. My father, coming from a poor background since childhood, continued to live modestly, even after becoming a company president. He never considered buying branded clothes. He always took great care of his belongings and used them for a long time. Hence, at our wedding, he wore a suit he had bought decades ago. Seeing this, my in-laws assumed that my father was not financially well off and misunderstood his restaurant chain as a small, privately owned business. As a result, they never delved deeper into my father's business. Time went by, without them understanding the true circumstances of my family. Days after managing to send my mother-in-law home, Jake tried to persuade me to reconcile our differences. His persistence was incredibly exhausting. It was surprising how insistent he was, despite the fact that he was the one who proposed the divorce. He seems to have a talent for quickly forgetting inconvenient truths. I opened the door, keeping the chain lock on, and Jake, upon seeing me, began to speak with teary eyes. "Lindsay, please, let's give it another try. Everything is my fault. I'm truly sorry. I still love you. Let's be together again." He then explained a sudden turn of events. Olivia had apparently approached Jake aiming to get his house, pretending to be pregnant to sway him. However, once she learned about Jake's considerable debts, she gave up and fled, and now Jake was coming to me to seek reconciliation. Huh? What are you saying? I don't know anything about that. How can you say that? After you cheated and brought up divorce, now that she's left you, you want to get back together? There's no limit to your audacity. I have no intention of getting back together with you. Don't ever come here again. I refused Jake right there and then. Surprisingly, he quietly left. However, this was not to be their last attempt. Days later, Jake's entire family unexpectedly showed up at my workplace. They were shouting, "Bring out Lindsay. Get that woman out here. We know she's here," causing chaos in the office and leading to the security guards being called. I stood there, dumbfounded by the situation. But they wouldn't have things their way any longer. I worked at the headquarters of my father's company, and that day, my father was also in the office. All of my colleagues also supported me. "Hey, what are you doing? This is my company. Don't just barge in and make a scene. I know everything you did to demean my daughter. Don't ever come near her again, and never set foot in this company again." My usually calm father shouted furiously at my ex-in-laws. Everyone, including the employees and Jake's family, must have been surprised at the anger of my father, who usually only shows his gentle and calm side. Sorry. We're really sorry." Jake's family desperately apologized. My father's stern words had immediately quieted them down. As they were being escorted out by security, my father shouted in a strong voice, "Don't you ever come here again, and never do something like this again. I won't allow it. You understand?" Hearing this, I couldn't stop myself from crying. I felt a deep sense of gratitude that my father had gotten so angry for my sake. Later, through the company's legal advisor, I decided to seek damages from Jake's family. I sought damages for the divorce due to Jake's infidelity, for his persistent attempts at reconciliation after the divorce, and for the disturbance at my workplace. The total amount was substantial, and I eventually received payment from them. I also made them sign a written agreement promising never to come before me again. Jake's family's state of affairs rapidly declined thereafter. Chased by the money owed to me and Jake's existing debts, they ended up selling their home and moving far away. In town, the story spread that Jake had committed adultery, divorced his wife, and after being abandoned by his mistress, attempted to reconcile. Facing such embarrassment, they could no longer stay in this town. While I felt a bit of sympathy for them, I also knew that everything was a consequence of their actions, so it was clearly deserved. Jake's family never appeared before me again. Finally, I was able to resume my peaceful days. However, my father had harsh words for me as well regarding what had happened. He blamed me for not recognizing before the marriage that Jake was a person who would commit adultery and accrue debts. Certainly, while Jake was at fault, my lack of insight was also partly to blame. Unable to argue with my father, I felt disappointed and disillusioned with marriage. I felt that I needed to give my heart a break. However, about a year later, I decided to marry my colleague, Matt. Matt was sincere and earnest in his work, trusted by everyone. I was initially attracted by his personality, but as we started dating, I was also drawn to his lifestyle. His life was surprisingly simple. He never indulged in branded items, used everyday things for a long time, but generously spent money and spoiled me on dates. His behavior was very similar to my father's. My father, who usually saves money, would splurge on family trips, bringing us joy. I deeply loved and respected my father. Realizing Matt's actions were similar to my father's, I felt that I could be happy with him in the future. Therefore, I decided to marry Matt. I was worried about being scolded by my father for remarrying within a year of my divorce, but his reaction was surprisingly positive, probably because he had heard of Matt's reputation at work and knew of his character. There was nothing bad said about Matt, and from my father's perspective as the company president, Matt seemed to be performing exceptionally well. I feel confident that Matt will take good care of you, Lindsay, my father told me happily. Matt and I were happily married. Not long after our marriage, we discovered that I was with a child. The happiest person to hear this news was undoubtedly my father. I was so glad to see my father happy. Reflecting on my time with Jake, where we didn't have children even after 3 years of marriage, it seemed like a stroke of luck. Matt and I plan to take over the company in the future. We are currently learning the basics of management from my father. Although there are many challenges, we accept that they are our responsibility as successors, and we are working hard together. We believe that we will need even more effort for the sake of our upcoming child, despite all that's happened. I am now very happy. Together with my family, we intend to firmly support this company in the future.